here with Belinda. She is a 7-month-old filly. We brought in from South Dakota in October. She's been with us for about 4 months now. She came in basically halter broke to drag along with you, which is just fine. It was all she needed to get her to where we could get her on a trailer and handle her. But ideally, you want to take that to a little more advanced level relatively soon. You don't want to have to drag your horse through life. So I try to get the horse stepping up and driving from the back. To do that, I like these little stockyard whips. They're about 5.5 feet tall. They don't have a big long lash to them. They're almost like a buggy whip. They are very non-aggressive. If I whack myself with it, I do very little harm. Likewise, you do the horse very little harm, but they perceive it as meaningful for whatever reason. So what I like to do is, instead of just going along saying, can you come, can you come? Now, she's coming because I've been doing this process with her. But previously, she would have come after the slack was out and the drag process began. We are accentuating the fact in these pre-start videos that the whole idea of pre-starting these horses is to move them ahead at this stage in ways that will make it better when we get to riding them. So what are some of the things we want when we ride them? Well, we don't want to brace. So if you're just dragging her, she's braced the whole time. She may not be obnoxious about it, but there's an element of resistance. So we want to get rid of that. It's easier to do that on the ground. If you do it in the saddle, it can certainly be done, but it's more awkward because the horse is doing an unnatural thing, carrying your weight, being influenced from up here. So what I like to do is use this stick and influence them from the back initially. That way, and this is real important, if you think about it, when you're dragging your horse along, the first thing that moves is the nose and then the front feet. When you drive them up and they start to respond to your hand by stepping forward, they step with their hind feet. What are we doing there? Believe it or not, at this very early stage, that is the first level of engagement or collection. They're using their back end to push off instead of their front end to pull them along. And that's more valuable than you might think, even at an early stage. Plus, it makes them lead better. So what I do is I will lead them along, and if she's a little pokey, I'll go, step up, step up. And the first couple of times you do that, depending on their nature, they'll pull back and shut down, they'll ignore you, or more often, they'll spurt forward, they'll pass you, they'll flare out with their back end, and all of that's pretty normal. You just wait it out. Now she's being a little pokey, so I'll tap the ground. Then I'll give her a little tap in the butt if she's not going. It's good I haven't done this with her for a while. It's a good refresher. So as I move my hand, I back it up with the stick. And if she wants to get ahead of me, all I do is turn away from her. So she can never really catch up and pass me unless she really gets foolish about it. So I move my hand. Aha, see how she's moving off my hand without the need to engage that stick. I move my hand, and she speeds her feet up. Move my hand, make a tighter circle, so the logical thing for her is to trot. She's a little pokey, so I just tap that whip on the ground. And when I stop her, I'll do this. Again, I'm using this little obstacle to stop her and a little body language instead of dragging on her face. Then the next thing I want to be sure I've got is to avoid that drag from a standstill. So I want to be able to just take the slack out, see, and have her move forward. Use a little body language, maybe accentuate it with the stick. This is a real sensitive filly. Then I take that hand out, say, can you go? A little slow. And I'm going to start her again. There. I'm going to speed her up a little bit. See? And she just needed that little reinforcement. And that gets into something beyond just leading. It's sort of directing. But you want to have that forward motion so that when you move your hand, they follow that hand. And when you slow the hand down, they should slow down with it. And that's how simple it can be to get one leading pretty nicely and driving from the back instead of dragging from the front. Now, when you try that, it's not going to go like this. I wish I had been able to show the first couple of sessions of this because, oh, they fly backwards, they fly sideways, they flare out, they run past you. And you just kind of work through that and get them boxed in to where there's an area where there is no pressure. A little slow. But imagine you wanted to show this filly in hand. Well, instead of having to drag her along to get her to trot beside you, you can just move your hand and there she goes. So those are some things to think about. Maybe ask yourself, does your horse, whether he's young or old, lead? Does he drive with the hind or does he drag? And if you're dragging him, even if it's going okay, maybe you experiment with this and see if you can get him more responsive. And here's the payoff. It will follow through when you start riding. Other things too, recall, when you start riding these colts, very often you'll tap them on the hip. Well, isn't it better to have it mean something in advance? So instead of having your horse get flustered under saddle, they say, hey, I remember that. It just means go forward. You're not teaching them that at the same time they're getting used to being ridden. Same thing for your older horse. If they're a little bit sluggish, you can tune them up on the ground, get on their back, and you don't have to have any kind of argument in a mounted position. You can settle that on the ground. So those are some things to think about. Give it a try. Let me know how it works out for you, and we'll see you next time.